This is Professional Launch with Ricot Aladdin, positively connecting the less connected, bridging gaps, and building futures in the community. Professional Launch with Ricot Aladdin.
Hello, professionals. My name is Ricot Aladdin, and I am the founder of Professional Launch and the host of the Professional Launch Show on WDOY. And today, my guest is Dr. Colleen Fitzgerald. She is the Vice President of Research and Creative Activity at NDSU. Dr. Fitzgerald, thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into academia and research leadership?
Oh my gosh, I'm not a spring chicken, so that journey could go for a long time. But maybe I'll start with some of an opportunity I had as a student.
Okay.
And so I was a French major, and I sort of stumbled into linguistics. And one of my faculty members, she was the dean of the night school division. I was at Loyola University in New Orleans. And she had a small National Science Foundation grant that had an opportunity for research experiences for undergraduates. And her work was looking at the language varieties, in particular the French language varieties that were spoken on the island of St. Bart's in the French Caribbean. And back then, Jay-Z, Beyonce, they weren't around, but now we many people know about St. Bart's because it's got this glamorous celebrity, rich people kind of island. But back then, we went and we spent some time. Another student and I went with our faculty member. And I helped to document some of the language that was spoken by the teens on the island and how their language was starting to change.
Wonderful. You mentioned you stumbled upon an opportunity. I'm curious, as a student, what was the opportunity?
The opportunity was to go on this trip with her.
Okay.
So to be funded. So it was a federal grant to allow opportunities for undergraduates like myself to be able to have firsthand participation in research. And so my first field research was between my junior and senior year in college, and going to firsthand in the Caribbean and recording language, working to transcribe it and analyze it.
Wonderful. So right now you are a VP. You are the VP for Research and Creative Activity. What excites you most about your role at NDSU?
Well, I think one of the things that really excites me is seeing people early in their careers succeed. I just take a lot of personal satisfaction out of seeing young people in their careers be able to get something that they've been working hard for. And so because our office mostly deals with faculty, that's assistant professors early in their career, maybe getting their first big grant, and being able to support them to reach their dreams. And so I think one of the things I learned in some different parts of my career was that part of what motivates me is altruism, being able to have the success of others happen in part towards to the efforts that myself and my team support.
Wonderful. I like to believe that everybody, on campus at any university, whether you are personnel, whether you are a professor, you are there for the students. And, for now, this is a graduation season. What advice would you give to new graduates looking to enter a competitive job market?
Well, I think one piece is expect failure. And I'm in the research world. And so we have a lot of grants we submit, a lot of proposals we submit that we fail on. And that failure builds resilience. In fact, failing often helps you realize maybe that wasn't what I wanted. Maybe I wanted something else. Trying and not succeeding, there is so much to be learned in that. And I think sometimes people aren't always maybe hold themselves back from trying because they're worried about what failure might feel like. And so I would just say every single successful person out there that you look at, they have a long list of failures because they're bold. They're putting themselves out there. And you have to really try a lot to actually win and actually succeed. And I think I think not being scared of failure, that's the one really important piece of advice for the graduates.
Wonderful. So if I may follow up on that, what is one of your biggest failures that you have in your career, because you have a very long career, and what lesson did you get from that besides grants?
Oh my gosh. Again, I would say I have had a long career, so I have a lot of failures. Gosh, that was, I think I've got to really think what, because you asked a lot of stuff. Well, I think one failure that, I had a project, and had some work that I was writing on for it, and, had submitted it to a journal, and, it didn't get in. And, I looked at those comments and really thought about, whether that was the right place for that paper. Were there some other morsels other morsels of wisdom could I reconfigure how I was doing things? Could I take a different approach? Maybe frame it a different way, or go back and get some more data, see if I had some different answers, and bring in some different data. So I don't know if that's maybe the best lesson, but
that's okay. That's okay. So, as the VP of Research and Creative Activity, what does your day look like?
Well, my day, every day is different. So I think one thing about my day is I may need to completely retool my day as it starts, or the day before, because something may have come up. The Office of Research and Creative Activity has the whole, it's all the underpinnings almost that enable research universities to succeed and thrive. So, for example, if you're a psychology professor, you might be working with human subjects. And so there are compliance and regulatory pieces that you need to do. You need to get approval for what you're doing, what your study looks like. And same thing for animal experiments, right? So you have these different components. We also have grants that need to go in. And so there's always a deadline. There's always something needs to go in today. And we also have tech transfer and intellectual property. And so, people have ideas. Are those ideas things that might actually be marketable, be something that the market is interested in? So, and then it's often a very outward focused job. You're looking to see if are there industries that are interested in talking and seeing how they can partner with your university. We do federal and state relations as well. So we might be talking with legislators, might be interacting with the delegation in DC. So it's really a lot of meetings, a lot of maybe coming up with some strategy, maybe touring a lab and seeing what an assistant professor is doing, and the students are working on their law. Every day is different, so it makes it a real adventure.
Wonderful. So I know that you mentioned earlier that the Office of Research and Creative Activities mostly work with the professors, assistant professors, and so on and so forth. But how can students and even recent grads leverage research and creative projects to stand out in their job?
That is a great question, because I think in that marketplace, right?
Yeah.
New graduates, students are always looking how they can stand out.
Yeah.
And I think research is one of those places you can get an opportunity. One of the things that's really amazing about NDSU is that we have kind of big chops in research. We're a top 100 public research university, but we're small, we're kind of cozy. And so that means that students can actually work in labs with professors who are top dogs in their field. And so that means a student can have a really kind of personalized research experience that you might not be as possible for them to have as much interaction with a faculty member if they were at a much bigger university. And what that means is that gives them exposure to developing hypotheses and testing them, to doing data analysis, right? We know there's a lot of interest in data science. There's opportunities to communicate the findings of the research, which means communication, right? That's always, and then working in a team. Research is really a team sport, and you play a lot of parts in that. And so that gives you some intangible experiences that enable you to really, I think, meet the market. Wonderful.
On that note, we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we'll follow up on that with Dr. Fitzgerald. We'll be right back. We are back today. Our guest is Dr. Fitzgerald. She is the Vice President of Research and Creative Activity at NDSU. So glad you're here. While we are on break, we were talking about support for graduates, undergraduates through an event. Tell me about that.
Well, our unit has tried to make sure we can leverage some resources so students can have these opportunities I mentioned with professors. And so having some funding for faculty and students to kind of match with research experiences. Well, one of the important things when you're doing research is that opportunity to be able to present it,
Yep.
to be able to do a poster, to talk about what you're doing and explain it to outside audience. And so our office, I would say one of our signature events is the NDSU Explorer, which is part of Student Research Days, and it's an all undergraduate showcase of presentations and posters by NDSU students, and it is just a blast. I think that there is, for me, I think one of the ways you could take the crustiest exterior people and get them to melt is to put them, kind of walking through the hallways with the undergraduates and their posters and asking the undergrads to talk about what they're doing for their research. The students are so excited and proud. They've worked so hard. Faculty are incredibly proud of them. And, again, I think it's a great way for people outside of the university as well to see what the value proposition is of NDSU research for undergraduates, which is tomorrow's workforce, right?
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So, and I'm glad you mentioned that because this show is about helping young professionals, college students, even those who left college for some reason, and find a career path that they can truly like. And one of the things that we always ask successful people like yourself is, what are some of the experiences you think that, or skills that young professionals should develop early?
And I mean, I'm going to start with, I was going to start with communication, but I'm actually going to really do your homework. You got to do your homework. Read what you need to do, right? You did your homework on me. And so do your homework, but then communicate.
Yeah.
And I think being able to be a good communicator, whether it's in writing, it's in speech, it's on social media, I think that really makes a difference and helps you stand out in today's marketplace. You may be an engineer, but at some point, maybe you're an engineer that would like to manage a team. There's going to be times where you're going to have to write reports. You're going to have to communicate to higher ups. You might have to write memos on, asking for additional resources for particular projects. And so working to understand your audience, what your audience cares about and what's important to them, and how you have something that's a match for that, and that they've got a reason to maybe have a stake in what you're offering. I think that's a really important skill. So I would put doing your homework and communication as the top two skills for graduates. And I would put listening on there as well. Really working. I'm always working to be a better listener. It's so important. And I think it helps to then, those three things also kind of earn a feedback loop, right? Because when you listen, then you go back and maybe do more homework. Then you work on, you refine your message, you communicate it better. And so you end up really being stronger all around. When you think of your skills, like I just gave you 3 skills, someone else might have 3 different ones. How are those skills kind of interacting with each other to make you even better each day?
Wonderful, wonderful. So, on that note, what are some of the common mistakes that you see new graduates make when launching their careers?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think, I don't know that I see young people making mistakes when they launch their career, but I do think some of the things that can really help you stand out, so showing up and being consistent. A lot of life is just showing up for what you committed. And, that's coming to work, that's being on time, it's bringing a good attitude. I think another thing that also helps people stand out is pitching in. And, I don't work as much directly with students as I did, say, 15 years ago.
Okay.
But I had a number of different projects that we were doing, and students were really involved in those. And, we were doing a lot of work with people in the community. And one of the things that, my students taught each other is, help out. So we're at an event, set things up. We're finishing up. We're at something and it's finishing. How can you help? Can you clean up? What can you do? Can you help put stuff in the car? And I think it's just all kind of trying to stay busy in ways that are helpful is something that people notice. And it's something that really creates a positive impression, because I think people really are looking for others to be helpful.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it's when I was looking at your bio and I see your work in language, with the native language, you've done an incredible work working with Native American language communities. So what have you learned about the role of language in career identity or empowerment?
I mean, that's a great question. What I have learned is that language is one of the most important things to many communities. And if you think about how personal language is, if we're praying to God, we're saying I love you to a grandparent, talking to our first child, we're using language to do that. And so having that connection with the personal, the heritage language, the tribal language, it's everything for many people. And you don't realize what you have until it's maybe not there on a daily basis. And so understanding how important something is to people, that's been a big lesson as well.
Okay. Can you share an example? Do you have an example? If you have an example.
One person who is really prominent in the language revitalization field, his name is Daryl Baldwin, and he's a citizen of the Miami. He's a speaker of Miami, and he's a citizen of the Miami tribe of Oklahoma, and he directs the Miami Center at Miami University. And there's a lot. He's a really amazing person, but he basically wanted to learn the language that his grandparents, great grandparents spoke, and there hadn't been someone able to carry on a conversation for a couple of generations. And he earned a linguistics degree, actually, so he could be able to better understand linguistics materials on his language, because those materials are written by academics and they're not necessarily very readable for ordinary people. And he did all this. Then he started to use it in his family, and they had a sort of 2 rounds of children. They had some older kids, and then they had some younger kids, and those kids, they were using it in the home. Yeah. And it really was around family, but to see what he sparked by his own example and his commitment to his family, to his language, to his community, to his identity, so I mean, you can, if you go, it's Myaamia. You just kind of Google that, Miamia language. It's amazing, the youth activities, all the stuff that the tribe is doing, all the ceremony, all sorts of things. It's really, really amazing. And I think it was really having that holistic connection back to the language. It started in the family, right? Again, as infants, we hear, even before we're born, we're hearing the murmurings, right, of the language that our parents are speaking. And so for something so personal to then really be something that was such a tool for betterment in that community, it's amazing. But also he gives back to other tribal other Native American communities in very practical and realistic ways. You can't go from A to Z and skip all the letters in between, right? It's a long getting through that alphabet. There's a lot of letters.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, you mentioned the tribal community, and one question that pops in my head is, how do you think that universities can better support underrepresented students as they are preparing for the workforce?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways. I think, first of all, we want to make sure all students have the same opportunities. We don't want just some students to have opportunities. And I think the opportunities that will enable underrepresented students to thrive, enable all students to thrive. Yeah. And so I think it's being really mindful of how we create more opportunities for everyone. And I think it's mentorship. For me, I'm going to always say involvement in student research, because when students are involved in research, that is a high impact practice. That does, we have statistics that show that helps students graduate. It gives them a sense of ownership and autonomy that enables them to thrive. So those are definitely some of the ways I think we can do that.
Oh, wonderful. You mentioned mentorship. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about mentorship. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. Today, my guest is Dr. Fitzgerald. She is the VP of Research and Creative Activity at NDSU. And right before break, we're talking about mentorship. She mentioned mentorship, which is something that is very important and personal to me. And so, welcome back. What role has mentorship played in your career? And how can young professionals seek it effectively?
Oh, I have been very blessed to have amazing mentors. And, I'm not a spring chicken. I've been around a while. I've been in a number of different kinds of roles. I was a student myself. And so I think at each stage I've been really lucky and had really amazing mentors. I think and I've tried to kind of also give back, right? So how do we take what we know and support other people in that journey, especially if it's, so actually, I'm a VP for research, and, I have a number of people who kind of reach out for advice because they're looking at that career track. And it's not something that, there's not a lot of social science, there's not a lot of linguists who are vice presidents for research. They might be in other kinds of roles, but not in this one. And so, realizing that you can be a resource for people and help them kind of understand a landscape that's kind of foreign and unfamiliar to them. And I've certainly benefited from mentors doing that as well. I think back to my dissertation advisor, who was a terrific mentor, and I think when I was in graduate school, what I heard after the end of my first year was people weren't sure that I maybe could work towards the goal, the academic output, that I had potential, but maybe I wasn't going to be able to bring it to fruition in terms of product, like, maybe be more focused. And, as I went through the next couple of years of my career, I think he was looking for what I was going to show as sort of self-motivated. And he tells a story about a paper I wrote. I had this data in my head, and so I wrote this little paper, and I didn't have to write the paper. So it was like the first paper I ever wrote that I wasn't assigned to write. And I, printed on some recycled paper I had at home, and it was pink. And so he'll still call it the pink paper. But it was something for him that he saw, okay, she's got this spark that's going to keep her going. And, he read it, thought it was really creative and good. I had another thing I was supposed to be working on, but it was occupying space in my head. And I wanted to just take it out of my head, put it on paper, maybe have people look at it and give me comments so that what I needed to be working on, I could keep working on.
Oh my God! You share something that is similar to me, because I like to write. I write songs. Sometimes I may have an idea for a song, and it would bother me so much until I put it on a piece of paper or start writing on it. Yeah. And so to your point with mentorship, I think that, and I said that multiple times, I don't think I would be where I am today without the support of mentors, and I mean really. They invest in me. This is how much they have contributed to my professional and personal life. And so my goal with this show is to create a resource, a platform where college students, young professionals can reach out to someone and begin those mentoring relationships. And on the show, we talked about that before. Sometimes you might be in a mentoring relationship, you don't even realize it's a mentoring relationships. And so what we want to do with professional lunches, to at least get it started. And so what do you think that young professionals should do first? Or how can mentors start that relationship, help them start that relationship?
Well, I think one of the things they can do is maybe ask, show curiosity.
Yeah.
and, you know, have some curiosity about what you're doing. You know, would you be up for, could I learn a little bit more? And, you know, maybe there's a way I could be useful for you by learning a little bit more. And so I do think, you know, finding way of, you know, maybe people don't think of themselves as mentors. I know I've seen people where, you know, I actually think about somebody, I think it was like my second to last year of graduate school. And there was this PhD student who had finished several years ahead of me, and she'd gotten like 2 one-year jobs. And then she'd gotten this tenure track job. And I said to her, I'm watching your career. You know, you're like a mentor, a role model, a mentor to me. And she kind of freaked out. She